And so I could tell you from the time you were 18 on, I could tell you every place you ever lived, your loan, bankruptcy, liens, judgments, cars, boats, homes. We had all the data.
Welcome to the Microsoft Partner Network podcast. Every week we bring in industry leaders and Microsoft partners to talk about the big ideas shaping business and technology today. Welcome back to the Microsoft Partner Network podcast. Today, I am joined by Dale Renner. He is the co-founder and CEO at RedPoint Global, Inc. RedPoint was actually just named a 2018 Partner of the Year Award finalist for artificial intelligence, which is super, super cool. Dale, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience, telling us who you are and a little bit about your company?
Sure. Thank you very much. Happy to be here. At RedPoint now, what we do is we provide software solutions that enable brands to transform customer experience delivery. And this is really essential today because the marketplace is changing fast, right?
Right.
And the way that we do that is we provide a customer engagement hub, and that customer engagement hub has three core capabilities. One is that we connect all the data. That allows our clients to basically know all that's knowable about a person, right? And we do that with our customer data platform. We have the #1 ranked customer data platform in the marketplace today. And out of that customer data platform, we produce something we refer to as a golden record. And that golden record is everything that can be known about the person that a company has about that person. And then the next capability is to drive the decisioning through our inline analytics. That's where we apply all of our machine learning, and we'll expand that into types of artificial intelligence, et cetera. And that, by the way, is some of the work that we've done and how we were recognized this year by Microsoft as a Partner of the Year finalist for artificial intelligence. And I'll come back to that in a second. But that next layer, that real-time decisioning, what that does is it gives us a next best action of some kind, or a decision, right? Because that could be an offer, it could be a notification, it could be an alert, it could be any kind of information. And then the third capability that we provide is to intelligently orchestrate all the touch points to a customer, because a lot of times in the old days, like 2 years ago, we always talked about channels, right?
Yeah.
Now we have to think about the Internet of Things, right?
Mm-hmm.
By 2020 there will be 20 billion
Right.
connected devices. All those connected devices are ways to communicate with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our customer engagement hub connects all that data, helps to drive the right decision, and then orchestrate across all those touch points. And really what we enable our clients to do, we give them a central point of control over that data, over those decisions, and over those orchestration.
Can you give me, it's so cool. Can you give me an example of the kind of success you're seeing?
Yeah, well, and you have to first look at what you're trying to accomplish as a company, right? Or let's call it a brand, right? Because everybody is moving, and it's interesting. There's some interesting statistics and numbers, and I can quote numbers until I can make your head spin. But the point is that there's a major transformation going on in the marketplace today. And what companies or brands are doing is they're transforming, it's digital transformation. Well, digital transformation is all about moving as it relates to customer experience or customer engagement. It's all about moving from an asynchronous or a batch world where we sent things out. It's a the old batch and blast kind of thing, right? You create a bunch of email and you send them out, or you send a bunch of mailings out, or whatever it is. It's a disconnected relationship to the customer, right? Because I send something out and I wait for it to come back. We're moving from that to a synchronous or a real-time world. And the reason that that's happening is that 60% of all consumers now are always on and are always addressable. And new business models have fundamentally changed what a consumer expects the relationship to be with a brand. Look no further than Amazon, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, and the list goes on, right? And we expect that immediacy, and that device that we all have and carry around, our phone, is a connected device, right? And that's the one that we all have. And so what's going on here is in order for a brand to have a relationship in a real-time world with a person, the brand needs to own that relationship. What we've done over the last 15 years is we've created all these silos. We've created engagement silos. We have our contact management system. We have our call center. We have our email. We have our loyalty program.
Right.
We have our social media channels. We have all those channels. Well, every one of those channels, or let's call them engagement, because they're really the last mile of engagement, right? Every one of those last mile engagement systems have three things that they basically are the enemy of the marketer today. They present the enemy. They have their own data, they have their own business rules or decision rules, and they have their own processes. They're optimized for a particular function. I cannot change a contact management system into a customer engagement system where I have a relationship with a brand. I'm going to optimize around that contact management. Email, what am I doing? I'm looking for hard and soft balances, open click-throughs, conversions, et cetera, right? Well, that's got nothing to do with having a relationship with a brand. That has to do with how good I am at getting a little bit of lift out of an email, whatever that might be, right? Driving up a higher conversion rate. So what happens in today's world is because we've done all this fragmentation, we've inherently built in latency. All right, and we've lost, in effect, we've created a situation where I don't really have a relationship with a brand between that customer. And you find this, have you ever gone to a store, bought something, some days later, get an email that offers you a similar or maybe even the same product? Well, how can that possibly be? Well, it's because somebody did some segmentation, you scored into the top 3 deciles, they created an email with an offer, and they sent that out. There was no connection between these. A simple example, are you a basketball fan by any chance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lakers, we just got LeBron.
There you go. There you go. We'll see if it helps. I like basketball, right? And I have a brain, or sometimes my wife is not so sure, but that's a different issue. But if I had a brain in each arm and in each leg, what would the chances be that I would actually be able to dribble a basketball down a court in a reasonably straight line, or to dribble around defenders and shoot, right? I would be in contention. My limbs would be in contention with my head, right? Well, there's really no difference between that, as silly as it might sound, than what companies have done when they've spread their decisioning, their business, their data, their processes, and they've optimized around a particular function. Because now I have competing brains. How is my email system interacting with a person? How is that working relative to what's happening out in the social networks, right? Well, I have multiple brains. How do I persist and grow a relationship out of relevance and value to someone where I have competing interests that are representing the brand? It is not possible to do that. Now, where it gets really bad, of course, is that when I shift from that asynchronous or batch world to a real-time world, because now I've got to make a decision, right? It's happening. It's happening while I'm engaging. And, if you look at any business where immediacy is important, if I'm shopping for insurance, I have lots of options. If I'm not getting the information when I'm engaging, chances are I'm not coming back, because I have a lot of options to go to. So, and if you get me, how do you keep me?
Right.
Got to have that relationship. It's the same right on down the line with every single brand that's out there today.
I can't help but think about customer privacy, and I have now in my home like 5 Alexas, and my soon-to-be stepkids, are talking to that thing, and they say they don't listen, but then all of a sudden we're talking about something, and I see a Facebook ad around the topic, or I'm starting to feel like everything is listening or taking my data. Where do you draw the lines there? How are you making sure that you're building that sort of privacy and protection for your customers?
It's an interesting challenge, let's say that.
Yeah.
Because we have a whole generation of people who've grown up sharing.
Yes.
All right? And they, at least in my case, I have 3 adult children now, and the things they've shared probably are not, as they get older, maybe not so wise, right?
Right, of course.
And everybody
College days.
and everybody suffers that. So let's just kind of write that off. But I think that because I've been in the business of using data, I'm not a big user of social networks, because all that data is being used and it's being collected, and you really have to look no further than all the debacle with the last election in the United States, right? And all the things that are happening around the use of data and how is that data deployed. So let's not get too draconian for the purposes of this discussion, but think about it as everything that you do, you leave a data footprint. Or fingerprint or some kind of a print. And that data is fair game to be used. And as we think about what's happening, I believe that GDPR, for example, in Europe represents the future of privacy, because it's clear that companies, and I'm gonna go generic for a second, because I'm not gonna point out any particular company that's a bad actor necessarily, but if you think about what's happened is companies are not always the best at governing themselves, right?
Of course.
And they might not even know. I'm sure that the CEO of a well-respected brand may not even know that data is being used in a particular way. It's very possible, right? So let's just say that there's no nefarious intentions. Let's just call it all accidental of some kind. But the point is that with GDPR, we now have a way to protect ourselves. And now you get to opt into the protection, right? Because I can have the right to be forgotten. And I think that what this does is, because they've put some real teeth in it, because it's now 4% of your annual turnover, right, is the size that the fine could be. And all of a sudden, that's real money, right? Big money potentially. And so what will happen now is we're going to force companies to pay attention to this, because maybe the consumer just isn't smart enough in general to recognize. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean low intelligence. I mean, they just aren't aware. There's an awareness issue, like how is this data really getting used? And so I think that as we go on, and this privacy wave will come to the United States as well, in the e-privacy legislation that's being contemplated and those kinds of things. So what will happen is it's going to become very important for brands to basically understand what they can and cannot do with that data. And it's going to be important for the consumer to understand how people are using that data and the way, and just like you said, well, if I have 5 Alexis in my house, yikes, I mean, they're spying on you, right?
Kinda.
Right?
They say they're not, but I feel like they are.
But it's like there's a creepiness factor here, right? And so I really think that where all this goes is we need to protect the consumer, and consumers need help being protected. And I think that's what all this is about. Now, as it relates specifically about what does a brand do and how do they think about this, GDPR, or data privacy, is really, you can put it into 2 buckets. One bucket is around all the data that gets used, right? And what we do, for example, with our clients, we're actually doing this in Europe right now with a number of very big brands. Because what we have the ability to do is, across an enterprise, we actually know exactly where you are in a database. So let's say we're working with a company that has 50, 60, 70, 80 sources of data. What we actually do is we know every single change that happens across the enterprise to every customer record, any kind of data that comes through, and we know where it was changed. And now what we can do is we basically can use our golden record to make that data available for our customers to steward that data, for the compliance people to see that data. And we can bounce that up against the rules of GDPR to capture those, and what's permissible, what's not permissible. And everything that basically fails the test, that is, we have to make this change enterprise-wide, we actually have the ability to take that data, mask that data, publish that data into a hub, notify those systems where we know that Dale Renner sits, and make that change available, or make that transactional change available to those systems. if it's not clear if it passes the criteria, now we can make that data available to be stewarded by the compliance people, and then they can decide what to do with that data or not do with that data. As complicated as all that might seem, I happen to think the hard part of all this is the change management side of things, because that's the other side of this, right? Because now, to be compliant, I actually have training, compliance, regulation. My people have to know what's going on. They have to know how to understand. If I call into a call center and I want to change something, I want to be forgotten. What does that mean, right? What do I do with that? What action do I take? And I actually could have the best data side of things, but if my processes, if my change management is not effective, well, I have a breakdown in this, right? So that's what companies are doing, and this is going to be really important, because I think we work with some very big brands in the U.S. today that have operations outside the U.S. And when the deadline came in May, they were still trying to figure out what does it mean for them. Now, in fairness, and this is always the thing about government regulation, you could read a regulation, and I can read a regulation.
Right, interpretation.
And we have two interpretations.
Yes.
Right, because there's a lot of gray area in this.
Right.
So what will happen, right, is they're going to go into this, and they're going to take a minimalistic approach to things. And what will happen is the regulation will change, it will mature, it will morph in, and then we'll do more things. So this is not, I'm not a doom and gloom. This is kind of like, this harkens back to, Y2K. Oh boy, we better get new systems in because our electricity is going to go off and we're all going to freeze to death, in the Midwest. And that's not what this is, right? And the penalties, I think, are really aimed at the people who are the bad actors. People who are showing movement, right? Who are making improvement, who are embracing the idea, who are working to train their people, who are trying to do this. They're not the ones that the compliance people are after here, right? It's the bad actors they're going after. So that's kind of what I think is happening, and it's really quite exciting because, kind of back to one of our topics, artificial intelligence, machine learning.
Yes.
You got to have the machines to do this kind of thing. It's too hard, particularly where you're working with companies that have 100 million customers, right? You've got all these systems, all these touch points. We already talked about IoT, billions of devices. Every home in the United States over the next 3 years will have 300 connected devices. On average, right? Your refrigerator will talk to you. Your toilet seat will talk to you. You've got, I think about it later. I've got high blood pressure. No, I don't personally, but if I have high blood pressure or whatever, well, when I said I'm going to have a smart toilet seat, right? Or whatever these things are going to be,
sure,
and they're going to talk to your doctor, right? And we're not going to be able to opt out, right? Because the medical world is all saying, hey, I get paid based on an outcome. This is what you're going to do. If you have diabetes, I want you to have a smart refrigerator because I want to read the barcodes, and I want to know why is that food in your refrigerator? You're not supposed to be eating that, right? I mean, that's kind of where this is all going, right? Well, that sounds like somebody's spying on us. Okay, maybe. But I think this is all about using the machines to help us to understand, to provide those better experiences, to provide those better outcomes, right? I think there's just an awful lot of power here to do good with things. As much as we read about the bad, I happen to believe I'm an optimist, right? So I think we're going to have our quality of life is going to get better. And, our kids are all going to have great jobs because of these kinds of technologies and opportunities coming in. So I think there's really a lot of really good stuff that's coming our way.
Can you talk a little bit about that job piece that you just mentioned? Because
sure.
I think people keep talking about that AI is going to take over, not going to have jobs, the workforce.
Yeah.
You actually think there's a lot of opportunity. I would agree with you.
I do. I was reading the study. I think this one is by Gemini, I believe, and they talked about by 2020. Artificial intelligence will eliminate 1.8 million jobs in the United States. But it's going to create 2.3 million jobs.
Right.
Right. And so, and these are all high-paying jobs. Now, I think you have a responsibility as a citizen, right, and as a person to improve your lot in life. You also have to be trained. You also have to get educated. right? You can't sit back and stick to something that's going to go away. And what's going to go away is the repetitive type jobs, right? The things that are mundane in nature that a machine can easily do, right? And it's not like some necessarily even just, a certain section of people. It's pervasive. 47% or 50% of jobs are going to be impacted in one way or another. And we can look at a real simple thing. Let's go back to the customer experience game for a second, because that's near and dear to my heart, because that's what we focus on. But if you look at what happens, historically, we did something called modeling and segmentation, and we took data and we pulled it out of a database and we put it over into these modeling products, these offline modeling products, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 different products out there that everybody knows about, and we built these propensity models, and those propensity models were based on the idea of segments. And those segments contain lots of people, that were somehow similar, right? And therefore, in our wisdom of modeling, we concluded that group of people would like this thing and this group of people would like that thing. Well, a real simple example, when we move to machine learning now, we can have a relationship with every single person. Right? So I can have 100 million relationships. I can actually create a path to purchase for 100 million people through machines. I don't need to think about segmentations anymore, because what I need is a relationship of one, and to have that to be relevant to that one person, right? So there's a perfect example. If you were a data scientist and you were very skilled at building offline models, those offline models may become, in effect, obsoleted in a real-time world because they atrophy so fast. But as a data scientist, my skills are very, very applicable, right, and maybe even more valuable in a real-time world, right? So there's an example where a job, I can take my skill sets and I can transfer over, and I can actually provide a higher value, and therefore I get paid more money for that, right? And I get a better result for the brand, right? And I actually, interestingly, have a better result for the customer. All right, so that's the kind of transition that's going on, and we can go industry by industry. Insurance, if you look at the insurance industry, 63% of managers in insurance companies say that artificial intelligence is going to fundamentally change their business in the next 3 years. All right? So let's say that you're a car insurance person, right? Well, a car is basically an IoT, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
Lots of data, there's lots of sensors, right? I'm picking up lots of data. Well, let's say I'm a conservative driver and I corner at 10 miles an hour. And I, don't go over the speed limit, and I behave and I drive the way I'm supposed to drive. Well, my insurance rate should reflect that. Let's say that you're a crazy driver, right?
What?
And exactly. I can tell by the look on your face. I'm on to something here, right? So maybe you corner at 30 miles an hour, right? And maybe you pass in no passing zones, and maybe you break the speed limit. Well, you should be getting charged a higher premium, right? Why do I have to subsidize you? If we work in a segmented world, we're all in the same segment because we drive a particular type of car or whatever it might be, right? But we're not. I'm a lot better driver than you are, right? I'm a safer driver. I'm a lower risk driver than you. So go ahead and drive the way you want to drive. I'm not here to tell you to not do that, right? Law enforcement deals with that. But I don't want to subsidize you. You just go ahead and pay your own premium. I'll pay mine, and I'm happy. I can embrace that process with insurance companies, right? Within the whole insurance business, as we think about the car, we can extend that to life. Different types of medical insurances, et cetera. So those are kind of directionally. But now let's talk about a real example, right? So let's talk about the coffee business. So Keurig is a client of ours, and everybody knows the Keurig, right? The machines.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And I own many of them, and they picked RedPoint to deploy our customer engagement hub. And what we did in that is we brought together 25 sources of data across all those engagement systems. We put that, we created a customer data, using our customer data platform. We created a single view of customer in the Azure cloud using streaming data from the Event Hub to create a picture of a person. And so now we've got a single point of control over all the data. Then what we did is we used our real-time decisioning, and we used some Cortana products, and we used some other Microsoft products. And we drove real-time decisions out of using all that data. Real-time decision today, in fact, if you go and buy a Keurig machine, you can take a little survey when you register the machine, which you should do, right, because you want it warranted. And when you do that little survey called a perfect cup, what will come back to you are 4 flavors and brands of coffee that are recommended specifically for you based on the information that you provide. It's just a little simple survey. Those 4 brands and flavors come from thousands of choices of coffee, right? All that decision is driven out of our software. All of it. And then what we're able to do is we tell you what you should be trying, or this is a recommendation. And now we're going to orchestrate, through our customer engagement, we orchestrate all communications, all interactions with their customer base, 22 million and growing, and interacting with around all the coffee flavors, everything you should know about making coffee, everything that you'd want to know about coffee. Now, what's interesting is that this year they're rolling out their connected brewer. And they believe that they have 25 seconds every day to talk to you in your house and engage with you about your coffee. And they can also do things like say, a nor'easter's coming in. Dale, you're a hot chocolate drinker. Just to let you know, we know that your supply is low. The drone will drop it off at 3 o'clock because the storm's going to hit at 9 o'clock tonight. Right? That's where this is all going. Now, that seems to me, now you could say, well, that's a little bit creepy. Why do I want to know that?
Sounds kind of cool to me.
It sounds cool to me, too, right? Because I hate it when I run out of coffee.
Yeah, me too.
Right? And so, interestingly, the first implementation that we did, bringing all that together, all that data together, driving those decisions, and then connecting across all the touch points so they could orchestrate all those interactions across any and all call center, whatever the channel might be. We did that in about 15 weeks, and we implemented the system in early November 2 years ago. In the first, just out of 6 campaigns, they achieved a run rate of $30,000 a day of brand new revenue.
That's insane.
Right? Just on 6 campaigns, and they only did 6 because they were going into the holiday busy season, right? And It's like, okay, this is what we want to do. Now, what's cool about it is that they have achieved a 76% lift in revenue using our platform with real-time decisioning. It's unheard of. That is unheard of. And we see this kind of thing happening across our client base. And it's different problems, right? We have a client over in Europe, Kingfisher. They're the 3rd largest do-it-yourself company in the world. Home Depot, Lowe's, and Kingfisher, and they have a half a dozen brands across 16 or 17 countries. And the first brand that we worked with was called Screwfix. And with Screwfix, they had a cycle time of their data that when someone transacted with them, it would take 2 weeks to get that data available for decisioning, okay? Which is not necessarily unheard of, right? I mean, there's processes. Our SLA, 5 minutes. So when someone transacts with them and the data hits, in 5 minutes, we're able to actually use that to drive decisioning. So those are the kinds of things that the real-time decisioning, that the machine learning is driving for our clients.
Wow. How long did it take for the machines to become so fast like that?
Well, it's interesting. Machines have always been fast.
But it takes time, right? You need more data. You need to process more, right?
Is. Yeah. Right now, every 2 days, we create the same as all data that was created since kind of the beginning of time through 2006. But what's interesting is that less than 1% of that data actually gets used.
Of course.
and analyzed for decisioning.
Yes.
The machines, because is this not humanly possible to do this, right? The machines make it possible. Now, historically, what's happened? Well, storage was very expensive. CPU, memory was expensive.
Right.
Processing was expensive. Back in the old days, right, I came out of the mainframe world. Back in the old days, you actually bought software to optimize things like sorting, right? Because it was expensive to do those kinds of things. Well, now with Hadoop and clusters, you can just dump all the data in and keep all that data. Marketers are interesting people. I think they actually have an insatiable appetite to ask questions. Well, that's because marketers live in a real-time world, and competition and products and things change, right? It's very dynamic. Well, when we have kind of very rigid and old processes, old approaches that tend to be very manually intensive, coding and all that, that's hard for a marketer, right? Because I have to wait for things. But in this world where I can consume data, I can ingest that data, I can understand that data, I can organize that data, I can key that data, I can get back to that idea of this golden record, and I can make that available. Because a CDP, a customer data platform, data, it's about operationalizing the data. It's not about building a database. It's not building a data warehouse. It's the operationalization of the data, and it's be able to stream that data right through the system to drive decisions, and then I can use that, and I have this, everybody knows ABN testing, right? Well, with machines, I can do 24/7 ABN testing. Right? I can have a constant champion challenger. I can use all this data. I can try different things, and I can push that out. I can make decisions. I find a champion. I go for it. Right? Things change. I'm constantly finding new champions because the data allows me to do that, and the data is I'm able to do that because the technology has changed, and the economics of the technology has changed so dramatically that it makes it viable.
So cool. My last question, Dale, is, just what are you most excited about, and what's the best piece of advice that you could give to partners that are just starting to, dip their toes into artificial intelligence?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just excited about everything, right? Because, we're doing really cool stuff, and we work with really cool companies, and we've got great people. So from my standpoint, we're doing hard things, but we make hard things easy. Right, and we're producing real results. So I'm excited about that. And we invested in machine learning 5 years ago. I wasn't even sure what we were going to do with it at the time. I just knew that we had to have it. We had to, and we hired our first people, and we started building technology. Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people now are talking about it, and we've been in market with it for 3 years. Right.
Right. You got a head start.
So it's really pretty fun. So what I would tell people is, like partners, you got to embrace it. Brands, you got to embrace it. Jump in, the water's warm, right? And I would say that if you don't embrace it, you're going to get left behind. And it's going to happen fast, right? And you can see it, right? These companies that have basically changed the dynamic of the experience, and we mentioned some of those before, they have fundamentally and forever changed the way we expect an experience to be delivered. So what I would say is embrace it, figure out how to use it, but don't boil the ocean, right? This is a continuous journey. This is one of those things where it's going to continue to get better. You'll get better insights. But the key to this is having the right people. And what I would tell people, that are trying to figure this out, learn Python, learn the languages that, learn Java, learn the languages that are going to be the drivers of this kind of technology. And when you do that, you'll be employed for the next 10 years, no problem, and you'll make a lot of money doing it. And so overall, I think this is a very exciting time just in doing business. Some companies are just going to be a dinosaur in a tar pit, and they're not going to make it because they won't embrace this change in time, and it'll be too late. But the companies that are doing it, they're doing it big, and they're doing it, and they're getting fantastic results. that's what I think this is all about.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dale, so much for coming on the podcast. This has been great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening today, and check out the podcast description for show notes. Be sure to subscribe and keep in touch with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at MS Partner.